My name is Mary Lou McFarland. I'm the founder of Women in Sports Tech, and we knew that employers wanted to hire more women and minorities, and we knew that women and minorities wanted to work in this business that had been mostly, and is still, a lot of white men. We love white men, just so you know. This isn't about that. We love men in general. We love people. I love how diverse this room is. But what we wanted to do was just give opportunity and drive growth opportunities for women in the business. So let's talk a little bit about the importance of developing your own personal brand.
Ultimately, the concept of authenticity is what's critical there. While you'll want to highlight and frame your interest in breaking into the space, being able to highlight how your past or previous experiences have built up the competency or credibility to do that is what's going to be key.
You don't want to create a perfect perception, but you want to be authentic. I do think, for me, LinkedIn is a big platform. I really, really love LinkedIn. As you look at what you post and how you position yourself, I would just always think, what's the worst case that could happen? And would this kind of stand up in the test of time? Would you want this out there 20 years from now? So that's sort of my rule of thumb.
Social media is, on one hand, it's kind of this free-flowing thing, right? But to me, consuming social media and creating content for social media requires more discipline than you would initially think it does, right? So what is your voice? What are you saying, and what are you putting out on what channels? You don't have to put everything out on every channel, and maybe you have a point of view on something, that you feel passionate about, so stick with that.
How do you find the right mentors, and how do you find the right sponsor, and what's the difference there?
I prefer to think about that as what do I want to be when I grow up. One of the, I've had, various mentors and sponsors, and, one of the pieces of advice that was given to me that I've sort of used as sort of a North Star is, what do you want, not your next job to be, but the job after that? Where do you want to be in 2 jobs, right? And so what, to your point, are the stepping stones you need to get to that second job, right? And there's multiple paths you can take to get there. But understanding, sort of setting your goal, 2 jobs out relieves you from the pressure of saying, I need to be there now.
What other tips would you have for minorities? And I say minorities very broadly. I wonder what advice you might have for breaking in without that kind of insider's hook, if you will.
Yeah, I'll say 2 things. Number one, we talked about LinkedIn as being an influential tool for establishing or expanding your network. Oftentimes myself, my manager, she's our VP of Talent Acquisition, we'll talk back and forth. The number of LinkedIn messages that we get that when we reply, people will say, I didn't expect you to reply, is kind of surprising at times. People will often underestimate the power of actually reaching out to another person for a short conversation, a coffee, etc.
I would just, probably reiterate and say, I always appreciate talking to someone who has ideas or thoughts or a point of view, rather than someone who's like, what jobs can I have? And people who have ideas are also people who know why they want that job too, right? Not just that this sounds really cool, I want to do it.
Has anyone in here ever experienced imposter syndrome?
You have to admit to yourself, what is in your kind of array of what you know and what you don't know, and then you kind of create that scorecard. How do I get to the next level? And be really open and honest about it. I think actually fake it till you make it is worse, because somebody on your team is then going to have to work for you in a way, or pick up the slack, which is not necessarily creating a good teamwork ambiance. So I think you want to be open and honest, and then put forward where you can improve.
If you can't get into the vertical because you don't have experience in the vertical, then that's when you try to volunteer. But I always bucket it out, like stuff that's learnable and stuff that has to be experienced.
So if you think about growth at a company like Snapchat from 400 to 3,200, the culture wasn't established by those initial 400. The culture is redefined every time that number doubles, triples, or in our case even grows 8 times. That's juxtaposed by a Nike, who for a 75,000 person company, the culture's been established over the course of the last 40 years, but rather as different pieces or epochs in the company's history come up, you have these moments where the climate of the environment changes. Pair that with the idea that over 70% of employees, when they quit, they don't quit because of the company. They quit because of their manager. Who's ever had a bad manager? Yeah, see, even that car outside.
We think a lot about diversity and inclusion. we think a lot about technology too, right? And there's been a lot written. This is sort of a circuitous way of coming to your point, but when people talk about AI, they often talk about bias and inherent bias in technology. Well, technology can only take so much bias out of the world. The team that's building the technology has to be diverse, otherwise there will be inherent bias. Like, you can never fully get rid of it, right? So if you're going to build an experience, an offering, a product, a solution, anything that you want to reach, as many people as you possibly can, the team that builds it has to be diverse. Otherwise, you're limiting yourself and you're limiting your business. So it's not just a sports thing. It's, in this case, it's a technology thing. But, if you want to reach a market, you need to represent that market that you're trying to reach.
So I would just say, if you're not in a hiring manager capacity right now, just 3 quick things. Number 1, hold your HR organization accountable. So make sure that they have diversity-focused practices around how you recruit, retain, and develop talent, whether it's in the form of unconscious bias awareness training, thoughtful rationale around the diverse slate approach, around who's actually coming on site for interviews or otherwise. Number 2, hold your manager accountable. As you think about building teams at your peer set, make sure that your manager has seen a grouping of diverse talent across a number of dimensions of diversity. That way you're building a team that's bringing together a variety of different competencies relative to what we think of as diversity. Finally, you have a referral network of incredible diverse talent, I'm certain. Making sure that every time that you see an open job that you know someone in your network that might be great for that, leverage your employee referral program or employee referral system to get those individuals in the pipeline. Even if they don't get the initial role, they're at least on the radar of the company and you can engage afterwards.